Yaha, one who is, cha, also, muda tamaha, the lowest of the fools, loke, in the world, yaha cha, and one who is, buddhehe, of intelligence, param, transcendental, gataha, gone, tau, of them, ubhau, both, sukham, happiness, edhete, enjoy, klishyati, suffer, antaritaha, situated between, janaha, persons. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Please repeat the translation. Both the lowest of fools and He who is transcendental to all intelligence enjoy happiness, whereas persons between them suffer the material pangs. Let's read it again. It's a very interesting observation on our situation. Both the lowest of fools and He who is transcendental to all intelligence enjoy happiness, whereas persons between them suffer the material pangs. Please hear the purport. The lowest of fools do not understand material miseries. They pass their lives merrily and do not inquire into the miseries of life. Such persons are always on the level of the animals, who, although in the eyes of superiors are always miserable in life, are unaware of material distresses. A hog's life is degraded in its standard of happiness, which entails living in a filthy place, engaging in sex enjoyment at every opportune moment, and laboring hard in a struggle for existence. But this is unknown to the hog. Similarly, human beings who are unaware of the miseries of material existence and are happy in sex life and hard labor are the lowest of fools. Yet, because they have no sense of miseries, they supposedly enjoy so-called happiness. The other class of men, those who are liberated and are situated in the transcendental position above intelligence, are really happy and are called Paramahamsas. But persons who are neither like hogs and dogs, nor on the level of the Paramahamsas, feel the material pangs, and for them inquiry about the supreme truth is necessary. The Vedanta Sutra states, Athato Brahma Jignasa. Now one should inquire about Brahman. This inquiry is necessary for those who are between the Paramahamsas and the fools who have forgotten the question of self-realization in the midst of life in sense gratification. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Tvishe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabho Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this verse, or in this episode, Vidura has been asking and making inquiries to Krishna. And, to Maitreya. Maitreya was very knowledgeable in devotional service in terms of intellect. But then when he sat down and heard Krishna speaking to actually Uddhava, Maitreya was nearby. And as he was hearing Krishna speaking to Uddhava, even though Krishna's main focus was actually on Uddhava, Bhagavatam tells us that Maitreya benefited because he was on the side and he was also listening. So the beauty of listening to Krishna is that even if we are indirectly listening to Krishna, Maitreya, Bhagavatam tells us, was not in the category of pure devotional service the way Uddhava was. But because he was sitting down just to hear about Bhagavatam, and because that way he came in touch with Krishna, that is why today in this chapter, he is now speaking about Bhagavatam, and he is benefiting Vidura. Even though Vidura actually wanted to fall at the lotus feet of Uddhava to actually ask him to speak on Bhagavatam, Uddhava, as a great devotee, also said that it is not correct that you come to me when Maitreya is here around this area and he is older to me. Uddhava is very advanced. In one sense, Prabhupada says in the purports, Uddhava is more advanced than Maitreya. But the important thing is, Uddhava remembered this principle of Maryada Vratikrama, which is, if someone is there and if someone is just as knowledgeable, but we are very young, then the devotee, even though they are very, very, very advanced, still out of humility, they give deference to someone who could be older than them. So Prabhupada makes it a point to state, it is not that Uddhava was not more advanced than Maitreya. And it is not that spiritual life is judged, or spiritual advancement is judged by one's age. It is judged by one's realization. But the point that is important in this chapter is that Maitreya became qualified to speak to Vidura, even though Vidura is Yamaraj, right? He's actually Yamaraj, he's a Mahajan, and yet he could hear from Maitreya. So you can see that the great devotees of the Lord, they constantly want to hear about Krishna. This is the important principle that we must take back. The whole chapter is entitled Further Enquiries by Vidura. And this verse is actually about two things. The first part of the verse tells us that there are two kinds of people in this world. There are those who are considered to be so foolish in life that ignorance is bliss is the motto of how they live. They are completely ignorant of their condition of life, and yet they think it is happiness. And anyone else who looks in, they can say, why are you living in this way? There is so much more value to your life, but they cannot see it. Because they are so caught up with sense enjoyment, they believe that that sense enjoyment will last forever. And those who are more advanced than them or who have had experience in life, they will tell you this is not going to last forever. So why are you so much invested in this? So one category of people who feel that we are very happy in this world, that group of people whom Bhagavatam describes now as the greatest fools. They don't understand the condition of their life. Then the other set of people who are very happy, Bhagavatam says, are actually those who are considered to be Paramahamsas. And they are the pure devotees of the Lord. And even though they live in a world which by nature is temporary and miserable, the fact is, they are able to see Krishna at every juncture of their lives. And they are always connected to Krishna. So no matter how much difficulty comes, they are able to surmount it. That is the value of the great Paramahamsas. So then Maitreya makes, now Vidura is speaking now, it's not Maitreya. Maitreya has finished speaking. And now Vidura, is making an observation. He's making this observation after inquiring about Krishna from Maitreya. So when one sincerely inquires about Krishna, then that bona fide spiritual master from whom you inquire, he gives us, or they give us the revelation, the blessings, to be able to understand and become enlightened, our true condition of life. This is a very important point. So actually, this verse then tells us that there are the lowest of fools, they think they are always happy. And then there are the great transcendentalists, the Paramahamsas. They don't only think that they are happy, but actually they are really genuinely happy. So both may seem to appear happy, but one's happiness is situated in truth, but the other's happiness is situated in illusion. So for the layman, everyone else, Vidura says, comes in between. Most of us will fall in that category, where we now begin to understand how foolish we were before. But at the same time, we are still not happy because we haven't reached the Paramahamsa stage. So Vidura tells us, everyone in between, they suffer and they know they suffer. The lowest of fools suffer, but they don't know they are suffering. So you can ask yourself, which is better? Some people think, no, better I don't know I suffer. But really, how long are you going to be able to do that? It's like taking suppressants and saying that this is the cure to your disease. It will suppress you for a while. But after that, what happens? You have these immunosuppressants that people take, right? And they cannot take for 1 year, 2 years. They have to take for life. But taking it for life doesn't mean they will not die. Eventually, nothing can suppress death, birth, old age, and disease. So the lowest of mentality in this world is to think that we can just continue to be happy and there will not be a moment when things don't catch us. Everybody will be caught at some point. If you're having a high now, you will get a low eventually. If you're on the low, then just wait, your high is coming. But low or high, what is the value? Do you want to be up and down all the time? So those who are in between, Prabhupada says and Vidura says, they should do one thing. They should inquire into the purpose of life. The moment they inquire into the purpose of life, they come before Jagannath, like you are doing now. So we cannot claim to be Paramahamsas because we cannot go out there and tell everyone I'm very blissful. Tomorrow morning when you go to work, it's very hard to say I'm in bliss. It's difficult. Or you go to school, it's difficult. But we can understand that life is permanent. No, life is impermanent. And therefore happiness and misery that follows life must also be impermanent. This is a very important point actually. So now we consider three things here. We consider the nature of the fools, as Prabhupada writes in the purport. We consider the nature of the Paramahamsas. And then we consider the nature of material happiness and distress. And the conclusion will be, we consider the value of inquiry. That is what this verse is about. So it's very clear. It's very clear actually. The first important point that is nicely stated is that the lowest of fools, Vidura says, they are so oblivious that they always manage to convince themselves that they are happy in this material world. And very often, their pursuits, are a waste of time. This is a very important point. They say very often that ignorance is bliss. But Bhagavatam actually tells us it's not really true. Because you may be ignorant about the nature of fire, but when you touch it, it will burn. It will burn. A child may say, I'm very innocent, so fire should not hurt me. But fire is fire. It will hurt you. If you say, I don't know how to swim, I'm very innocent, I'll just go in the water and the water will save me. That is lowest of fools, isn't it? Because whether you know how to swim or you don't know how to swim, water is water. It is not dependent on who you are. It is the nature of this world. This distinction must be there. This distinction must be there. Akbar and Birbal, you all know Akbar and Birbal. They had many nice dealings with each other. One day, Akbar called Birbal. Sometimes Akbar had nothing to do. If you're a king and everything is going on, you really have nothing to do. So you ask silly things. So he turned to Birbal and he said, Birbal, today I want you to find 4 fools in this kingdom. The lowest of fools, you find them and you bring them to me. So Birbal was thinking, but why? And Akbar said, so that I can be amused. Birbal said, is that our duty in life? And Akbar said, I am the emperor. You go and bring 4 fools now. So Birbal thought, okay, I will bring 4 fools now. So he went out, and the first person he met was this person who was carrying, he was a man, he was carrying a large plate full of clothes, sweets, and expensive gifts. And he was looking very happy. So out of curiosity, Birbal asked him, my dear man, for whom are you carrying so many gifts? And the man said, these gifts are for my ex-wife. Ex-wife? Oh, okay. Why? She has left me. She has married someone else, and now she has a child with him. So I'm bringing all this for her because she's going to have a child. So Birbal thought, this one is number 1 fool. I'll take him now. He said, you come before me. Today you're very lucky. The emperor wants to see you now because you qualify. Of course, he didn't tell him why you qualify, but you come. Then he walked down a little bit and he saw another man. This man was sitting very clumsily on a buffalo. And while sitting on it, he was carrying a bundle of grass over his head. So then again, Birbal said, my dear sir, what are you doing on this buffalo with the grass on the head? Shouldn't you just put the grass on the buffalo? Because he can carry it. And the man said, no. See, this buffalo is very favored by me. And she's pregnant at the moment. And when she's pregnant, she should not be carrying all this heavy grass. So that's why I'm carrying the grass on my head for her, you see. Conveniently forgetting that he was sitting on the buffalo. So Birbal thought, this one is also very good. So he brought him. And so Birbal came before Akbar, and said, my dear emperor, today I have brought the fools. So Akbar heard what they are doing and he laughed and he said, yes, these 2 are very good fools. But where are the other 2 fools now? And Birbal said, well, the first fool is of course you, after these 2. And Akbar said, why? Because how foolish you must be to ask me to find other fools in this world. Have you got nothing better to do? And Akbar thought about it and said, yeah, actually it's very foolish, isn't it? Then he said, but who's the 4th fool? And Birbal said, I am the greatest of the 4 fools for listening to you to find 2 other fools. It's a very simple story, but it tells us that the height of foolishness in this world, according to Bhagavatam, is when we don't understand the purpose of our life. Is when we while it away in what we think is amusement and what we think is the pursuit of happiness. That is unnecessary. And this kind of foolish endeavors is what gets us into trouble. Another example that Prabhupada gives in the purport of foolishness is nice. One time, when Indra in Bhagavatam offended Brihaspati, his guru, he had for a little while, he had to take the form of a hog, a wild boar, nowadays in Singapore, you see more wild boars. Hopefully you don't get hit by them because they are very friendly, they will come and just knock you. Some people have got injured actually. But at that time, Indra became a wild boar. He became a hog, because of his offenses to his guru. So long time passed, and finally, Brihaspati said, I think it is enough that he has gone through this. So he called Brahmaji and told him, please tell Indra to come back. So Brahma went to find Indra. And Bhagavatam tells us, that when he went there, he found that actually Indra was having a very good time as a hog. He was surprised. Brahma was very surprised. Just like Prabhupada has stated in the purport, Brahma actually tried to remind Indra, you are entitled actually to the great opulent life in heaven. Can you please come back? You're actually Indra. But Indra, as the hog, said, my dear Brahma, I don't know what life in heaven is, but I'm telling you this is heaven. This is really heaven. Sometime you should try it also. Why? Because I've got such a nice hog wife. See how beautiful she is. And from her I've got 3 very nice hog children. See how cute they are. And with the hog children and the hog wife, look at my nice palatial house, which is full of stool and urine and dirt. And the kind of food I eat here, you can never taste in heaven, Brahma. It's all, there are so many varieties of stool here. So much of delicacies are here. Why should I go back to this heaven that you talk about? Because I'm very happy here. And after, my children grow up, they will have hog children and I'll become a hog grandfather. So why to stay here, And in that way, all the favorable arguments were given by Indra, until Brahma decided this is enough now. With his potency, he just transformed Indra against his will into Indra. And when Indra resumed his consciousness as Indra, and when he looked at where he was staying previously, then he could understand and be grateful to the value of Brahmaji coming and intervening in his useless life. So, Prabhupada alludes to this point of the hog, because in Bhagavatam and in the Puranas, this story is very helpful for us to understand actually. So we should understand that foolishness comes in all ways. There are many, many examples of foolishness, but they all lead to one point. The fool who thinks he's happy in this world is the person who has no connection to Krishna. And he does not realize one very important point, that in this world, happiness and distress are actually two sides of the same coin. This is a very important point. The fool does not realize that, but the Paramahamsa knows that actually. If you read 13th chapter, there is that long set of verses between 8 to 12, 13, 8 to 12. In the purport, at some point in the purport, Prabhupada says very nicely, happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. That means they go with each other. So the learned man who is in between the hog and the Paramahamsa, what should they do when they face happiness and distress in this world? Instead of suppressing and leading and turning towards addictions and trying to suppress misery without knowledge and trying to seek happiness which is impermanent, Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, one should learn to tolerate. We learn to tolerate this happiness and distress. Prabhupada says in the purport, you can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress, isn't it? We cannot. But we must learn to become detached from the materialistic way of living. The more we learn to come out of that, the more equipoise we become. Generally in this material world, it is considered foolish from spiritual life that whatever that is desirable, we run after it because we think we will be happy. But when we get something undesirable, we automatically go into distress mode. But Prabhupada writes in the purport, if we are actually in spiritual position as devotees, then by Krishna's mercy and Guru's mercy, these things will not agitate us. And how do we come to that stage where we are not caught up in the happiness and distress? The three words Prabhupada uses in the purport is very nice. Unbreakable devotional service. Isn't it true? Unbreakable. Is it there? Is it there? Oh yeah, thank you, Prabhu. It's unbreakable. Unbreakable means unmotivated. That means there's no motive for us to come to Krishna except to serve Him. There's no motive for us to serve Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters except to serve them because they are dear servants of Krishna. This is a very important point. And Prabhupada says when this unbreakable devotional service is done without deviation, that means we just lead simple lives, engage ourselves in the processes of devotional service. If you chant and hear Krishna's name, if you worship Krishna and offer respects to Him, then in that way, we will be free of the effects of the material happiness as well as the effect of the material distress. Otherwise, in happiness, we behave foolishly. The problem with material happiness is when you get it, you behave foolishly. How are we foolish? We forget that it will go away. That is foolishness. You see? That is the point of foolishness. We don't realize that happiness is going to go. Or when it has gone, we delude ourselves and say, no, I'm very happy, I'm very happy. In this world, why is it that addiction to alcohol and all these things are so strong? Because there is no connection to Krishna. The devotee or the living entity is actually a devotee at heart. They want to find happiness, but they don't know how to find it. And they haven't inquired about it. So it's very important for us to understand that. In another very important purport that Prabhupada gives, and that is his conclusion to the point of material happiness and distress. He says in 3, 3:28:36. Easy to remember. 3:28:36. In that purport, there is one point, where Prabhupada starts with this line. As long as one acts on his own account. I don't know whether it is there. As long as one acts on his own account. This is the foolishness that we display. When we think that we are in charge of our lives, when we think that we do not have to surrender to Krishna and we do not have to surrender to a higher authority who knows Krishna, then what happens is everything is on our account, isn't it? Even in material world, if someone tells you, look, I'll help you through this, and you say, no, I don't want, then that person will say, well, then you're on your own, isn't it? It's on your own head now. So what happens is, if he acts on his own account, without sastras, without guidance, then that person is subject to all the material perceptions of so-called material happiness and distress. But actually, Prabhupada says in a very powerful statement, actually, there is no happiness. Just as there is no happiness in any activities of a madman, very nicely pointed out. Madman may appear to be very happy, but actually he doesn't know the meaning of happiness because he's mad. He's mad. He has no conception of happiness. So in material activities, the mental concoctions of happiness and distress are false. Factually speaking, everything is distress. Prabhupada defines happiness in this material world as temporary cessation of misery. What a wonderful definition, isn't it? It's not in that purport, it's in one of his famous lectures. Temporary cessation of misery. It's like taking Panadol when you have headache. The headache is there. The reason could be because you had a late night, or you drank too much and you had a hangover and you can't take it now, and you come back and you don't know what is happening. You take a Panadol hoping it will go. Or you're very tense, sometimes we get tense and we get headache, isn't it? Then we just take 2 Panadols and we think it will go. But the fact is, like material world, the Panadol is a suppressant. It is a suppressant. Because after a while, the Panadol effect will go. And then that's why they tell you every 4 hours you have to take it. So every 4 hours you have to take Panadol. Is that how we have to live in this world? This is the point we have to understand. So actually, the foolish person doesn't understand this nature of material happiness. And that is why that person is in difficulty. So Bhagavatam tells us in 3:32 of Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is such a powerful point to remember, those who are not completely foolish and those who are not Paramahamsas, this is how we live in this world. We are in between, And 3:32, not as in 32, but 30 and second verse, it tells us very nicely in just 4 lines exactly what happens to us in this material world. Yam yam artam upadate dukkena sukha hetave tam tam dhunoti bhagavan puman sochati antakrit. No, yadkrite. It's very important actually. Whatever the materialist tries to produce, he will produce with great pain and labor. And think about it. In our lives, we have to work so hard, and only you know how much pain and labor you have to put into each endeavor in this world, isn't it? Fathers put so much pain in endeavor, mothers put so much pain in endeavor, children put so much pain in endeavor. Everything, nothing in this world is without pain and endeavor. Everything is difficult. But what the materialist doesn't realize is that even though he puts so much time and labor into this, the reason he's doing is because he thinks by putting some pain, I will get some happiness. If you think about it, you know how foolish that is. Just for a fraction moment of happiness, I want some pain. I have to endure so much pain, so much pain. So this is foolishness actually. And that is why, very often, my Guru Maharaj used to tell me this, you work so hard 30 days and you get the check. And then after that, within half a day, all the bills, half the check will go. And you work so hard, isn't it? And if Diwali is there, worse still, everything else also has to go because you have to spend more. And the month you think you don't have to spend, some expense will come. And whatever you wanted to save is going to go. But you work every month thinking, now I will be able to save, now I'll be able to save, now I'll do something, now I'll do something else. But at the end of the day, with all that labor, very little moment of happiness there is. Isn't that foolish? Just think about it. But what happens if we use that moment of labor to labor for Krishna? What if we used it in devotional service? Then there is no happiness or distress. There is only peace and bliss. And that is very different from happiness. Happiness means, by Bhagavatam standard, that you depend on an external circumstance to make you happy. But you know and I know, Prabhus and Matajis, that when we depend on a variable, it is going to be variable by nature. If you depend on someone to come to see the movie with you, and you feel that the happiness is because the person is coming and he cancels on you, then watching the movie suddenly has lost its luster. Because it was the company that was really nice. You see? So we have to depend on someone. How many times you have depended on people and you have become disappointed? Isn't it? After a while you just say, forget it, I'll just manage it. Isn't it true? It happens. So that is why this Bhagavatam point is correct. And the time factor is catching us. And that we don't realize. That whatever moment of happiness we get, by time it is lost. Happiness comes, by time it is lost. Because it's not connected to Krishna. That which is not connected to Krishna cannot last forever. That which is not connected to Krishna must die with this body. That he doesn't realize. And therefore, when Krishna takes it away from that person, Bhagavatam tells us, that soul, yad krite, that person, for that reason, sochati, he laments. This is the reason why we lament. Because when we work hard, we want the fruits of the result. And that is where we are in difficulty. When the Paramahamsas work hard for Krishna, they don't expect anything from Krishna. When we walk into Gauranga center, we should ask ourselves, what expectations do I have? Then we should ask ourselves, what acceptance do I have? What is it that I'm accepting from Krishna? And what is it I'm expecting from Krishna? Expectation will create disappointment and difficulty. Because expectation is the cousin to speculation, isn't it? When you expect, you think someone must give you something. But it is speculative. They may not. But when you accept that this is what Krishna has given you, then automatically, without expectation, you become very peaceful. Because you understand this is your quota. That's it. That is why when Bali Maharaj, had asked, who did he ask? When Vamandev asked Bali Maharaj, this point, isn't it? Bali Maharaj asked Vamandev, take whatever you want. You're a Brahmana, take it. But Vamandev said, I only want 3 steps of land, that's it. And Vamandev's feet are very small, isn't it? So Bali Maharaj was feeling very generous. With 3 feet, 3 paces of land, my dear young Brahmana, what will you have? You don't even have space to build a house. You can only just stand there, turn here, turn there, just like your box, See your boxes? You can't move so much, right? Now when you want to stand up and do kirtan, you have to dance within the box, It's not easy. The only thing you can do practically if you want to do is just keep jumping. Because at least you land in the same place, hopefully. But if not, you're in a very small space. True, 3 paces of land is nothing actually. So that's why he said that you take more. Why not take more? That's very important. But then Vamandev tells him something which is the key to what this verse is telling us. That those who are in between should develop this attitude. He says very nicely, it's in the 19th chapter, 8th canto, 19th chapter. I forget the number will come, sorry. Yadrichayaha, yadrichaya upapanneha. Yadrichayaha means by its own cause. Santushto vartate sukham. Na asantushas tribe loke ajita upasama. No, upasatithe. Yeah, I think it's 23rd or 24th verse. That is what it is. It starts with yadrichayaha. Is it there, Prabhu? Is it 23rd, 24th? Somewhere there. 19th chapter, 8th canto. Is it 24? Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. The meaning is very nice. He says, Vamandev tells Bali Maharaj that a person should be satisfied with whatever he achieves by his previous destiny. How do we know what we have achieved from our previous destiny? Because you're living it now. That's it. You're living it now. Whatever you're living through, good or bad, is your previous destiny. You have come to Gauranga Center by some previous punya, by some nice sadhu sangha. It is your destiny to come today. If anyone has come for the first time, it is your destiny to come today. If you have come for the upteam time, it's also your destiny to come today. So it's a very nice point he brings up. He says that whatever you achieve that is now coming You may think you are achieving it, but it is coming by the blessings and sanctions of the Lord through your previous destiny. That is very important. So if you understand that, then know one thing. You should become contented with what you have received. Because if you are not contented with what you receive, that discontent, what will happen? It will never bring happiness. It will never bring happiness. And that is why those who are in between the fools and the Paramahamsas, we have to learn to cultivate one attitude. The attitude of accepting what Krishna has given as our destiny and becoming satisfied with what is given and enjoying it for the moment. Very important. Sometimes we live in this material world in such a way, okay, class has started, now Prabhu will finish, now let's get on with the next thing, We don't even enjoy the moment of devotional service. It's so difficult. Actually, as organizers, we face the most problem, isn't it, Inwatsa Prabhu? We always tell each other, when festivals come, you all are jumping up and down, but we are jumping and thinking, when will it end? Or will it end properly? Will it end with no Kurukshetras and no problems, Will the altar be standing? Will somebody outside complain of noise? So we are not relishing the entire festival. And that is our foolishness. Because we're not accepting that the moment the festival starts, it's Jagannath who's running the festival. We just have to be alert by why should we be so worried? Prabhupada had so many challenges as iskcon was growing. Yet no matter how much challenges were there, he kept it at one corner. But he always came for Bhagavatam classes. He always took Bhagavatam classes. He always chanted Krishna's names. He always honored Krishna by serving him. Because he understood that what is coming is yadrichayaha. It is coming from your previous destiny. Why to lament about it and why to be overjoyed about it? It is coming because you deserve it. Just you have to be thankful for it. And gratitude means we become connected to Krishna. That is the royal road for devotees. So when we are discontent, then it becomes very hard for us to see Krishna. Because we'll always find fault. Isn't it true? That is the problem with material life. We find fault always. We don't smell the roses as we are walking down the street, you see. Supposing we say, I have to drive now from Cuff Road now to my house. We just want to drive. But it may be a nice journey. I'm not sure whether it is a nice journey here. But if you drive, for example, in New Zealand, from Auckland to Wellington, 10-hour journey. It's a beautiful journey. Among other things, it's beautiful because you only see the sheep and the cows and you don't see people. It's quite nice for a change, So as you're driving, it's so nice. But sometimes we are so caught up with the idea of reaching the place that we forget to see how beautiful the place is. It is also true in Vaishnava relationships. We always come together and we do service, but we forget to appreciate each other when we are doing the service. We forget to appreciate how nice we are being happy here because of your sadhu sangha. That is what brings happiness to the devotee. Not that we come together and we find fault with each other. That is a sign of discontent. Our mind will say, no, I'm finding fault because I want higher standard. What standard are you talking about? Who are we to decide what standards are there? That's the job of the Paramahamsas. It is not the job of us. Our job is to serve. That's all we are supposed to do. And that's why this verse is very important. And that's why he says, if someone is not self-controlled to accept things as they are, then, my dear king, even if you give me everything in this world, all three worlds if I possessed, what will happen? I'll still not be satisfied. I'll still not be happy. You see the point? So that is why it is very important that we don't lament for what comes, but we accept it. And in accepting it, we become grateful to Krishna. This is very important. And this is the way we come in between. Otherwise, Bhagavatam tells us a very important point which is related to this verse. Another great observation that Kapila Dev makes to Devahuti. It's also in the 3rd canto. It's found in that same chapter I quoted, 30th chapter. The verse is text 4. Text 4. Text 4 is the most closely related verse to today's verse actually. Especially to the point about the hogs, And you see it. Is it up, Prabhu? Okay, see that. The living entity in whatever species of life he appears finds a particular type of satisfaction in that species. That's why Indra liked his hog life, you see. He thought, this is it. I'm at the top of the ladder. Look at my luxurious hog life. I've got the most deluxe tool in the world. I've got, the best wife in the world. Look at her. No one is more ravishing than my hog wife. So whatever species we are in, Bhagavatam points out, we think that there is some satisfaction to it. And we are never averse to being in that situation. So human life also, we think, it is so nice, that we should just continue with enjoyment and suppression, and this will be life. But we don't realize it's meant for a higher goal. It is meant to become self-controlled. It is meant for, and that's the last point today, it is meant for self-inquiry. It is meant for self-inquiry. And that is why in the purport, Prabhupada writes so nicely this point, that at the end of the day, the only way in which we can actually grow towards becoming, servant of the servant of the servant of the devotees, is when we take up this idea of inquiry. Without inquiry, it is very difficult. This is an important point. And there's a very important verse, that tells us why inquiry is so powerful. And for some reason, I've quoted this verse every time I've sat here for the last 3 times. I don't know, it just keeps coming up. It's in 1:3:39. By now, I think all of you know the verse also. So we can chant it together. 1:3:39. It's a master verse actually, because it fits right into what Prabhupada is telling us about what we should do with our life. And that should be inquiry. Ateta dhanya bhagavantamittam yadva sudeva akhila lokanathe kurvanti sarvadmakamadma bhavam na yatra bhuya parivarta ugraha. And here, it is very nicely stated here, why inquiry is important. Inquiry is about the nature of this world. Inquiry about the nature of ourselves. Inquiry is about why we are here and in relation to what is the purpose of life. Bhagavatam tells us these inquiries, right, are the only way by which we can become successful in this world. There is no other way to become successful. Success means spiritual success. Only by starting to inquire about spiritual life will we become conscious, cognizant of our hog life. Otherwise, we will not be. The moment we start asking, what am I doing? What is the purpose of this life? That day we have come out from the hog existence. That is why inquiry is so important. And see what Bhagavatam tells us. These inquiries will invoke transcendental ecstatic love for Krishna. The moment we inquire about Krishna, that our journey for spiritual life has begun. That's why Prabhupada quotes, right, the famous verse, Athato yak brahma jignasa. That is the aphorism in the Rig Veda. And that is so true of spiritual life. The day must come when we must ask ourselves, what is the purpose of life? Is the purpose of life just simply to find temporary happiness in this world? The day you ask that, 2 things will happen. That day we really become successful. That day Bhagavatam tells us we become conscious of this world. How do we become conscious of this world? The day you ask these questions, Prabhu's Mataji's, that day Krishna is Paramatma in your heart. He will reveal to you what is the purpose of life. How does he reveal that to you? Either through externally by getting you to meet devotees, because devotees with sadhu sangha, they also share with you what they have learned. Another way in which he helps you is by getting you inspired by Srila Prabhupada and a spiritual master. And you surrender to that spiritual master and you submit to him. That is another way of growing in spiritual life. And internally, Krishna becomes the voice of your conscience. That's when you will know, I'm going to do something, but something in my heart is telling me, not a very good thing to do. Not a very good thing to do. That's Krishna. That is Krishna. So you see, this is how Krishna invokes transcendental ecstatic love in the heart. And when that transcendental ecstatic love comes, then we experience happiness. In all these inquiries, we learn to experience content, satisfaction. That is real happiness actually. When we are contented and when we are satisfied. And when that happens, the verse ends very nicely, that this is the only way to grant the 100% Prabhupada doesn't just say full immunity. He says 10%. 10% means 100%. 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. How nice this point is actually. But one thing is very important. If we want to inquire, two things we must always be very clear. In the purports of 434 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says very nicely, one thing very important that's needed. No, two things. Inquiry is good, but the inquiry must be on the foundation of two things. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned guru will not be effective. This is a very important point. Yeah. So if we do not perform devotional service, or if we do not inquire on these two principles, that we are submissive when we acquire, and we are doing service. One time, one very intellectual person who liked Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's guru, he came to see him with a lot of questions he wanted to ask. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj did something very interesting. He said, I will answer your questions, but first you go and do service with the devotees. Go and clean, go and wipe something, go and wash the pots, go and do that. So the gentleman was thinking, why should I do all that? You can just answer the questions. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, no, you go and do that first. You please submit to that. And so, out of deference, he became submissive. And then he went to serve. And after a whole day of serving and submitting, when he came back before Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, and when he wanted to ask the questions, he also told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that now whatever questions that I had, right, I understand the answers actually. Because even previously, theoretically, I understood the answers. But by serving and by becoming submissive in my heart, the answers which were theoretical had become realized and practical. That is why in bhakti, we are not armchair philosophers. The more submissive we are, the more our inquiries are answered. The more service-oriented we are to the Vaishnavas and to the devotees and to Krishna, the more all of these inquiries will be answered. It's a very subtle thing. It is not something which is gross. If you want to know whether this happens in the material world, it does. It does. Ask any good teacher worth their salt, and they will tell you that many students come and inquire, but many of them inquire because they challenge. Such inquiries never bear fruit because they don't want to actually hear. They just want to challenge. But when we meet students who are submissive by nature, open in their hearts to hearing from an authority, when we hear someone who is helpful, who's very service-oriented, who's very obliging, those students very often become the students whom teachers like. And the teachers always try to help such students more. It's very natural. You ask any teacher and that's what they will tell you. It's very natural. When you become parents, you will see the same thing that you will do to your children also. There will always be one troublesome child and one good child. You may pay a lot of attention to the troublesome child, but the good child, is always ready to hear you. So people may think from the children's side, oh, father, mother are biased. But based on reciprocal affection and love, it is natural. It is natural. So this point we must understand. But if we do not inquire on this basis about the value of life, then we will continue to be fools. If you want to know whether this is true in Bhagavatam, when you have time, look at 555. 555 tells us what happens when we don't inquire. 1339 tells us what is the value of inquiry. 555 tells us when we do not inquire. This way, we should always be guided by Bhagavatam. Parabhavastha vadabodha jato yavan jignasata atma tattvam yavat kriyastha varidam manovai karmadmakam yena sharira bandha. Prabhupada very often quoted this verse, and the meaning is very important. As long as you do not inquire about the spiritual values of life, this is why we inquire, to understand what are the values of life which we must inculcate. See, we are not talking about philosophy here. We are talking about values. Values means behavior. Finally, what brings happiness to us in this world is our own behavior. When we behave well, everyone behaves well around us, isn't it true? Have you noticed that equation? And even if those who don't behave well in front of you, eventually they have to behave nicely with you. Because you're tolerant. You're not jumping on them. You're not counteracting them. Everybody loves a sadhu. The 6 Goswamis, it is stated the ruffians love them and the realized souls also love them, R and R. They both love them. That's the mark of a devotee. Even a materialist loves a devotee. And even a spiritualist loves a devotee. Because the devotee always places values above everything else. Whole Bhagavatam is about values. It's all about values. And value must always be translated into our behavior. People get tired of devotees if we speak something and don't act in the same way we speak. Then it becomes incongruent, you see. And people are not fools, they can see it. You don't have to be Paramahamsa to notice these things. Even a hog can see these things actually. So that's why it is stated, if we don't inquire about the values of life, then we are defeated. We are defeated by time factor. We are defeated by our karmas. And we become subject to miseries that arise from ignorance. And whether it is sinful or pious, the fact is karma always has its action, its resultant action. Some people say, let me do good things. Very nice, do good things. But you still come back. And when you come back, your exposure and liability to bad things is high, isn't it? Those who are in risk management, you realize as long as you are here, the risk is always there. So why to look at life between pious and impious? Look at life from a transcendental angle. That we are neither in the happiness mode of matter, neither are we in the sadness mode of matter. But we want to come out of it. And very nicely, Rishabhdev says, if we are engaged in any kind of karma, our mind will always be colored with fruitive activities. We will come here because we want something. And it must always be material. We want name and fame. We want people to respect us. We want people to praise us. We want this, we want that. But what are we giving? That we forget. When you come before Jagannath, the question is, what are we giving? Why should we take? This is the mood of a devotee. So to end, now we have understood the nature of fools. Then we have understood what happens to us in between, because we have to understand and balance what is matter, what is happiness, and what is distress. But what is the mood of the Paramahamsas? That is amazing actually. Because the mood of the Paramahamsas is that every day is a festival for them. Every day is a festival for them. It is nicely stated, in 12.12.50 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Shukdev Goswami says to Parikshit Maharaj, he's ending Bhagavatam now. So he says very nicely, Tadeva Ramyam Ruchiram Navam Navam Tadeva Shashvam Manaso Maho Sattvam Tadeva Shokar Navashoshanam Drinam Yad Uttama Shloka Yasho Anugiyate. See this applies to the Paramahamsas. Because when we hear about the glories of the all-famous personality of Godhead, these glories of Krishna are attractive, they are relishable, and they are ever fresh. So if we want to come towards the side of the Paramahamsas, we must also have faith in the words of Krishna. The more we have faith in the words of Krishna, the more relishable they are, the more attractive they are, and they are always navanavam, they are always fresh. How long you all have been chanting Krishna's names? Nobody is tired of Krishna's names, isn't it? How many times you have come to see Jagannath? You're not tired of Jagannath. How many times you have eaten prasadam? Hopefully you're not tired of prasadam also. Actually, the last thing we become tired of is prasadam. Everything else we may get a bit tired, but prasadam always wakes us up, So this is very important. And these words, about Krishna, they are a perpetual festival. How nice it is stated. Maho Utsavam. It's Maho Utsavam. It's a great festival. It's a festival for what? For the mind. The mind is the source of all our problems. But when we hear about Krishna, when we relish his names, when we actually describe his glories, just describe Krishna to the next person. And this verse will apply to you. You read about Krishna and you talk about Krishna. And when that happens, you feel that it is fresh, you feel relishable, you feel attracted, And whatever oceans of miseries that are in your life, they will dry up. Just try it. Bhagavatam will never cheat us. Never cheat us. And one last point on happiness is the point that Krishna gives as a great observation to Arjuna in 266 of Bhagavad Gita. Very important verse for all of us. Nastir buddhi rayuktasya na cha yuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayata shantir ashantasya kuta sukham. And this is very important. You know, we have shared this verse even with people who do not believe in God. And when they read this verse, right, even they shake their heads and say there is some value to it. If you are not connected to the Supreme in Krishna consciousness, then two things will elude us. We will not have transcendental intelligence, and our mind will be very unsteady. So the next time your mind feels disturbed, Prabhus and Matajis, look to 266. The reason is something in our behavior and our values is not connecting us to Krishna. That is why we are disturbed. Not because somebody said something or somebody didn't do anything. No. We have to look inward. It's our fault. Something we are doing is not right. And if we don't have a steady mind and transcendental intelligence, Krishna says there is no possibility of peace. And then he ends very nicely. How can you be happy if you're not peaceful? Isn't it true? If you're not peaceful, how can you be happy? So the drunkard is not peaceful, but he thinks he's happy. Because in that drunkard state, he thinks it is happiness. But actually he's drinking because he is either stressed or he feels that, he's upset. So when we turn to all these different ways to enjoy ourselves in this world, we think we can defeat happiness. But we don't realize that misery defeats us. But when we take up chanting of Krishna's names, Harekrishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then you'll find that we become very peaceful. We just move around the world, we chant Krishna's names, and nothing touches us actually. And if it touches us, we pray more to Krishna. Someone said, Prabhu, whenever I'm chanting Krishna's names, I'm very peaceful. But the moment I stop, all the problems come. Very good. What must you do? Chant more. Then if we stop and we say, after chanting so much, I'm still not peaceful. Very good. Chant some more. Chant some more. A lady disciple of Prabhupada said, Swamiji, when we go back to the Vaikuntha Lokas and when we go to see Krishna in Golok Vrindavan, after all these years of chanting, what activity, what transcendental, wonderful activity